Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast in association with MMA Play 365, giving you the edge in MMA betting. I'm your host as always, Newsome, with your co-host John, and tonight we're back once again to break down UFC 245 from Paradise, Nevada. Just before we introduce John, I just want to say a very special thank you to everybody who tuned into our last episode across YouTube, iTunes, Spotify and SoundCloud. We had over 14,500 views on YouTube alone. It means a lot, guys, so thank you very much. John, welcome. How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm very well, thank you, my friend. I'm very well. First and foremost, like you said, echo the thank yous to everyone who tuned into the last episode for UFC 244. Massively appreciated, like you said. And man, we've got an equally as good, if not better, card this coming weekend. UFC 245, triple titles, stacked to the rafters. I mean, this card's got it all. I'm mega excited. It feels good to be back. It feels like we haven't taught fights for such a long time. I'm looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, man, I disagree with the equally as good card because I think this is the most stacked card of 2019. Like you said, 3 title fights and some awesome fights to back those 3 title fights up as well. You know, just like you, I'm super pumped for this card. It feels like a long time since we spoke fights with the break and everything. So, yeah, I can't wait, man. It's going to be amazing. But just before we start, as always, we need to mention MMA Play 365. We're coming off a great winning month in November, which puts our 2019 monthly record at 8-1-1, which is 8 wins, 1 loss, and 1 break even. But something I really want to mention for this episode is the new affiliate program here at MMA Play 365. This affiliate program will give anybody an opportunity to earn an income. So whether you're a fighter that could use the extra money for fight gear in your training camps, somebody who works a 9-to-5 job or works in the trade industry, or you're in a professional environment such as an MMA journalist, for example, the affiliate program is definitely something you should at least take a look at. We launched the program about a week ago and we've had a great response so far with numerous sign-ups, so it's clearly appealing to many people. You can find out all the details and information that you'll need to know at www.mmaplay365.com/affiliate. And with that said, let's break down some fights at UFC 245 in the main event of the Newsome MMA main card. The fight I've been looking forward to for years, as I predicted this a long time ago. We've got 2 dominant welterweight wrestlers fighting for the welterweight championship. We've got Kamaru, the Nigerian Nightmare Usman, versus Colby Chaos Covington. We've got Kamaru Usman sitting at a -175 favourite with the comeback on Colby Covington at +155. John, how do you see this fight going down, man?
Oh man, I'm so excited about this fight. This fight is awesome for me. This is my most anticipated fight of 2019. I mean, some people may not like the styles of Usman or Colby Covington, but I certainly do. And with the background and the build up that these two don't like each other, and then the fact that this fight has been delayed for such a long time, I think that just adds to it and adds to the hype and the magnitude of this fight. And like I just say, I literally cannot wait for this fight. I'm so excited to see how it plays out, and I think that people are so excited for this fight because of those similar styles, those 2 wrestle-heavy styles that these 2 guys bring now. Although they're both wrestlers, they both have quite a different style of wrestling. Kamaru Usman, as we know, he's a strong guy. He's so strong. We saw what he did against Tyron Woodley. He backed Woodley up against the octagon fence for the entirety of their fight, and he just dominated that from start to finish. He didn't give Woodley any breathing space whatsoever. His takedowns are fantastic up against the fence. He's so hard to shrug off you when he engages in the clinch up against the fence. And when he gets you down, he tends to hold you down. He tends to do some damage. He tends to beat you up. His gas tank is ridiculous. He's got insane cardio. And out of the 2 fighters, I'd say that he has the more power in his strikes. He's the more powerful striker. He's got the more chance if anyone's going to get a finish via strikes. In my opinion, it's Kamaru Usman because he does have that strength advantage, in my opinion. And he's been training, as we know, he's been training with Henry Hooft as well. So he's already got that ridiculously good background in wrestling, that ridiculously strong grinding, clinching, nasty, wrestle-heavy top game. But then add into that some world-class striking coaching as well. I mean, this guy's dangerous. And in the Woodley fight, I mean, he only took him down a couple of times, but he was just so dominant in positions like the clinch, and he doesn't really fear any comeback from anybody, which allows him to kind of just walk you down, stand you with your back against the fence, and then he can just dictate how the fight plays out. I mean, he could throw strikes pretty relentlessly, and then he'll go for that level change and take you down. If you can't get the takedown, he's more than happy just to grind you against the fence. And like I say, he's so strong and he's so heavy in that clinch position. It's so hard to turn around and get his back against the fence. But he's going up against Mr. Stamina himself, Colby Covington. The man, this guy's got an equally as ridiculous gas tank, if not more ridiculous. I mean, in his last fight against Rafael dos Anjos, in his last fight against Robbie Lawler, he threw an insane amount of strikes. It's just phenomenal how he can keep that pace going for so long. I don't really understand where his gas tank comes from, because he literally, from start to finish, he's throwing strikes. And as I said, they've both got a wrestling background, but Colby Covington's a very different wrestler. He will try and utilise a similar style in pushing you back against the fence with his strikes, but then he'll level change, but he's not really got that smothering top game. We spoke about this before. You can definitely get up when you're fighting Colby Covington. He's not one of these guys that's going to take you down in the first 30 seconds, minute of a round, hold you there for the entirety of the round, and then the buzzer goes and rinse and repeats. He's a guy that, I mean, when you look at the statistics against Robbie Lawler, he landed 10 takedowns against Lawler. He landed 7 takedowns against Rafael dos Anjos. He is a guy that gives you an opportunity to get back to your feet. He like I say, he hasn't got that real heavy top game. But the fact that he throws so many strikes, as I mentioned, Usman can throw strikes for days. He's got a gas tank, but Colby Covington to just throw strikes non-stop, literally just non-stop throughout the 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes that a fight will last. He will just be constantly in your face, mixing up his strikes, throwing kicks, throwing 1-2s, just constantly there in your face, not giving you a single second to breathe and get away from his smothering style. And then, as I said, as you continue to cover up from those strikes, that's when he level changes, gets the level change, lands a bit of damage. He'll wrap up the neck in awkward positions. He doesn't really attempt to finish all that often. He just tries to make life awkward for you, wear you out. Obviously, your gas tank is going to be depleting every time you try to get out of the position that he puts you in. You'll get back to your feet, and then he'll do it all over again. And he can do it solidly for 25 minutes. And that is what makes this fight so intriguing, the fact that both guys can take each other down. Both guys have got relentless gas tanks. Both guys like to push their opponent up against the fence before they really utilise that wrestling. So someone has got to break here, or someone has got to give. Otherwise, they're just going to stand in the middle and they're going to trade. And for me, this is going to be one of those fights that lasts 25 minutes. It's going to be a fight that is a hard 25-minute back and forth war between two guys that, like I just said, do not want to take a back step. But for me, at the moment, I'm edging with the underdog. I'm edging towards Colby Covington now. I've seen a lot of stuff on social media throughout the build-up to this fight about how each fighter can win and their paths to victory. I admit that Kamaru Usman has that strength advantage, and it wouldn't massively surprise me at all if we did see Usman clinch up with Colby Covington, press her against the fence, and Covington have a nightmare of a time and not be able to get out of that position. But I'm going to give Colby the benefit of the doubt, and I think that he will be fully prepared for what Kamaru Usman brings to the table. He's an elite wrestler himself. Yes, he can be taken down. We've seen that in fights. We saw that against Rafael dos Anjos. He got taken down 3 times himself. Dong Yoon Kim took him down a couple of times as well. So you can take him down. He does get back to his feet. He's been training with elite wrestlers in the build-up to this fight for a long time over at ATT. I just think that Colby's style, that relentless striking, I think Usman is more relentless, getting you to the ground and holding you in a clinch position up against the fence. Whereas I think Colby will throw a lot of strikes, and I think the throwing there, all those strikes, I really think it can put Kamaru Usman off his game, off his rhythm, off his timing, and I think he will have difficulties pushing Colby Covington back against the fence and really utilising that strategy that he uses so often, the one that we saw against Woodley. Like in that Woodley fight, he was so dominant, but Woodley was so gun shy. He looked like he didn't really want to engage. Looked like he was happy for the entirety of the fight to be spent with his back against the fence, which is just the worst possible place you can be against Kamaru Usman. Colby's not going to allow that kind of thing to happen. I can't envisage this fight going down where Colby Covington just stands there with his back against the fence, hesitant to throw strikes. Colby always throws strikes, no matter who he's facing, whether it's a wrestler, elite striker. He's always throwing strikes. He's always happy to utilise that game plan of output with his strikes. And yeah, I honestly think it's going to be such a close fight. Like I say, I think it's going to be a real close back and forth. I think Usman will land some of the bigger strikes. Colby will land the majority of the strikes, the significant strikes in terms of output. I think Usman will be able to take Colby down at times. I think Colby will go back to his feet. I think Colby will spend some time trying to chain wrestle and clinch up with Usman and kind of just stalling Usman's progress before they engage in the striking again. But yeah, I just think it's going to be so close. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if this goes down to a very close split decision, because I really do think these two guys are such fine margins between the two of them. But I'm edging on the side of Colby Covington in this fight. I think he's just going to be able to land the more strikes. I don't think Usman will be able to connect as freely with the strikes as Covington will. Like I said, I do think he'll land takedowns, but I think Colby will get back to his feet, and it's going to be razor thin in my opinion. But I think Colby Covington's going to take a decision.
Yeah, man, the fight is such a good fight, and you know, this is what, like I said, this is one that I've been predicting for many years, because with the age of both of these guys, and you know, they're not like 30-fight veterans or anything like that, and I just feel that these two are the best two in the division, and I just see them meeting quite a few times still. You know,
yeah.
They're both dominant guys, and I just feel that they're both going to run the division, and that's what I said a long time ago when I predicted this. I said at some point in the near future, when Tyron Woodley's time is over, it'll be these two running the division, and that's exactly what we've got right now. Now, obviously, they both come from a heavy wrestling background. We've got Colby, who's an NCAA D1 wrestler, Usman, that's an NCAA D2 wrestler. There's, you know, I did my theory in regards to the NCAA and how it works and what the differences are between the divisions before the Woodley and Usman fight, which I actually cashed on Kamaru Usman in that fight. So if you're not too sure, just do a bit of digging. There's not a lot between it, and especially with this being MMA and not pure wrestling, I honestly don't give too much an advantage in this fight to either fighter when it comes to the wrestling. And I ultimately think that, you know, we see it time and time again where we'll get two wrestlers or two BJJ guys, and the fight will end up staying on the feet, striking, just either because the both fighters have got respect for one another, or both styles just cancel each other out of where they're strongest. Now, I do feel that we're going to see some wrestling in this fight at times. I don't think it's going to be a heavy wrestling affair from either side, and I do think the fight is going to be won and lost on the feet as well. Now, the advantage that I give Kamaru Usman over Colby Covington quite clearly is the strength, and you mentioned it as well, John, what he did to Tyron Woodley in regards to just pinning him to the cage, landing strikes. You know, they got separated quite a lot, which I heavily disagree with, because, you know, I think Usman was throwing at a really, really high rate in the clinch, and it's not as if he was just running the clock down and wasting time. But what he did to Tyron Woodley to nullify a fighter like that's won so many fights, and was a fighter that some people have been calling potentially the best welterweight, you know, of all time. I disagree with that, but that's a different topic. Now, what Usman was doing to him was just phenomenal, and that was down to pure strength and cardio as well. He is a machine, just like Colby Covington, which I'll move on to soon. But that's the advantage I give to Usman, because if Usman can get a hold of Colby, he is bigger, he is stronger, his physical attributes do outweigh those of Colby, then that's his way, in my opinion, of scoring some of these rounds and winning on the judges' scorecards, which I agree with you as well, John. I do think it sees the judges' scorecards. I'd be very surprised if we see a finish. Like you've mentioned, Usman is the one with the power in the hand. So if there is going to be a knockout, it is more likely to be Usman. But Colby's durable, man. We've seen him be hit. Robbie Lawler hit him quite a few times clean. And I know with the longer that fight went on, the less power Lawler had. And, the chance of the KO was getting slimmer as the minutes were going by. But he still hit Colby with some decent shots. And, I feel if Lawler struggled to put Colby away, I just don't see it from Usman. And like I say, I don't think the fight is going to be spent too much on the ground for either fighter to find a submission either. So I do see the fight going to the distance. Obviously, it's MMA, 4-ounce gloves, crazy things happen. You never know really, but the numbers and the way that they fight tell you that the fight's probably hitting the scorecards. Now, onto Colby's side. Colby, for me, he's 100% got the cardio advantage in this fight. I know Usman can go hard for 5 rounds. I know it's very unlikely that he's gonna gas out badly or anything like that. But I honestly don't think there's another fighter in MMA that's got the cardio like Colby. In the Robbie Lawler fight, he threw, I think it was something like 400 strikes. It was like 180 significant strikes officially recorded. Those numbers, and the fact as well that Colby wasn't tiring. He might look tired and he might, he might sweat a little bit, but man, that dude will just keep going. It's almost like his cardio hits a point where it's at the lowest it'll go, which is still absolutely fine, and it's like a brick wall. It won't go any lower than that, and he'll just keep going at that pace, and it's crazy. And every single person that you speak to who has any sort of association with Colby will tell you that they just don't understand it. He'll just keep going for days. The last one that I heard was Anthony Rocco Martin in an interview with Mike Heck before his Ramazan Amir fight, and they got onto Colby in that interview. Great interview as well, by the way. So shout out to Mike Heck. But they got into Colby, and Rocco was saying the same things, that if it's a battle of cardio, there's nobody that beats Colby. So that's a significant advantage for me in this fight. The other thing as well is the speed and the volume, because that's going to come from Colby. So if Colby can get himself, in the center of the cage and moving around and not letting Usman tie up with him and just popping these little jabs out, these little 1-2s, strikes that aren't going to hurt an opponent, but it's strikes that rack up volume. Some fighters tire just by the continuous peppering of the strikes. I'm not saying Usman will, but that's a feature of what Colby does. And just like I say, just putting it on his opponents, just flicking the jabs out, the 1-2s, and it pisses opponents off as well. The fact that they're just constantly getting tapped in the face by these strikes. And again, I see that as another advantage for Colby with the speed and the volume. So it's almost like, for me, if Colby can, and I know this is a bit of a cliche, but if he can get his game going, then I think he's got a really good chance of winning this fight. But Usman's got to close the distance, and like I said, if he can do that and he can pin Colby to the cage, it's going to be a long night for Colby. However, I just cannot envision a scenario where Colby's pinned against the cage like Woodley was, and Woodley he didn't look himself in there. He wasn't trying to get out of those positions or anything like that. Whereas I just cannot envision Colby just standing in that clinch, just getting peppered by Usman without trying to, exit, push his opponent away or anything like that. I just don't envisage it. His IQ is super smart as well. He does some really good stuff with his wrestling. His defensive wrestling is also some of the best that I've seen in MMA. That was on display a little bit in the Dong Hyun Kim fight. Dong Hyun Kim tried taking him down quite a few times, and just Colby, it was almost like he was setting traps in a way. He was letting Dong Hyun Kim sort of get in on him a little bit, but then he would use he would use that attempt from Dong Hyun Kim to reverse positions and really get his defensive wrestling go to ultimately put himself in a good entry position to land a takedown on him. And like I say, he does some really, really clever things. So I think if Usman does get Colby down, because listen, Usman lifted Tyron Woodley and put him down multiple times. So if he does that against Colby, which I think is possible, I think Colby will either stand right back up or he'll use those positions to get in on a single leg reverse and put Usman on his back. So this is what I mean in regards to the wrestling. I do think it's going to cancel each other out. I just don't think there's going to be anything significant in this fight where the judges are going to score heavily on something that's happened wrestling or grappling related. I think either fighter will pretty much stand back up quite quickly after a takedown, if the takedowns are landed at all. So I just don't see any real advantage for either fighter in the wrestling department. I don't think it'll weigh too much on the result, and for that reason, I do think it's going to be out striking. And as I've already mentioned, I don't see Colby being or allowing Kamaru to pin him up against the cage for long periods. So if I'm right in saying that, you're not going to weigh too much into the clinch when it comes to it, or if it comes to a decision. So then it's out in the striking, and I just see Colby really frustrating Usman. I see him landing a ton of volume. I think the cardio is going to be there for the full 25 minutes. I think if any fighter slows down more than the other, it's definitely going to be Kamaru Usman. And for that reason, I'm having to pick Colby Covington to win this fight. I think he's going to, like I say, land a volume. I think he's going to outlast Usman, and I think he's going to take it on the judges' scorecard. So I've got Colby Covington to win. I'm going to take him to win via decision. Now, in the next fight on the Newsome MMA main card, the co-main event of the evening, we're back for another title fight. This time it's the featherweight championship. We've got Max Holloway versus Alexander Volkanovski, who it seems a long time coming for this guy to get a title shot. We've got Max Holloway sitting at the minus 170 favourite. The comeback on Alexander Volkanovski at plus 150. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is another fight that I'm really looking forward to seeing. That it's always going to be an entertaining fight when Max Holloway's in there going up against the guy Volkanovski, who you just said it's been a long time coming for him. I mean, he's riding one hell of a win streak at the moment now. When you look back to his only defeat on his professional record, it came back in May of 2013, and he's just been dominating guys. Fight after fight. I mean, it was only 2016 when he came into the UFC, and that level of competition has gradually stepped up. But he just looks so good against everybody. I mean, when you look at those first few fights, the Hirota fight, Shane Young, and then he put on that beating of Jeremy Kennedy and got that step up to Darren Elkins, and then he was the man that would step up against Chad Mendes after Chad Mendes came back, and again, although he had these a few shaky moments against Chad Mendes, he came back with a huge flurry and a huge finish in that fight. And then he fought an absolute legend in Jose Aldo, who is also fighting on this card. We will discuss later on. And he made Aldo look a very ordinary striker. And you just mentioned it then with Woodley against Usman. Woodley not looking his usual self. I mean, Aldo was on a bit of a tear at the time. He'd won back-to-back fights. He was looking really good. His striking was looking really sharp again. And as I say, Volkanovski just made him look so ordinary. Just he just didn't allow him to do anything. He didn't allow him to get his strikes off. He didn't allow him to get his timing. And something Volkanovski, I think, does really well is dictates the pace and the timing in fights. He's very relaxed in there, and he's got his a very good fighting style. He'll flick out that jab over and over again. He utilises a lot of leg kicks. He was hammering the low kicks on Aldo over and over again. Which obviously Aldo himself is a master of leg kicks, and Volkanovski was beating him to the kick, especially that inside low kick. He was fluid with switching stances, and then he really sets up the jab and those low kicks for to then unleash that big right hand, that big straight right down the pipe. That's a shot that he likes a lot, and one that he's really masters that with the timing of his jabs and his low kicks and the manipulation of the distance between the two fighters. I mean, I think everyone by now has seen the pictures of this guy when he used to play rugby in Australia. He's only 5'6", and he was an absolute unit, and he's kind of carried that small, stocky, big physique over into fight, and he's often the smaller guy when he goes in there against people. But he doesn't seem that way because of the way he fights. As I mentioned, just the dictation of range and timing and things like that. He doesn't seem like the smaller height-wise guy when he goes in there. And to add to all of that with his striking and timing, he's also got very good wrestling. He's got a very good top game. He's got very good ground and pound when the fight gets to the mat. We saw that again, as I mentioned, in the Jeremy Kennedy fight. And he's always threatening with those takedowns, which is something that fighters don't like coming up against. They don't like it when you've got someone who's got good striking, good timing on their strikes, good nice jab, mixes things up, but then also has that real strong potential to take you to the mat and spend some time in top position. But he's going up against one of the best of all time in this featherweight division in Max Holloway, and when we talk about fighters manipulating the timing and range, I mean, there's very little in the game that are better than Max Holloway, especially at featherweight. I mean, for me, he trumps Volkanovski in that department. This guy is he's so long, his limbs are so long. He just does such a good job of keeping people on the outside with those 1-2s. He's got insane cardio. He's got a ridiculous chin on him. He's got a great takedown defense. I mean, he's such a well-rounded guy, and at featherweight, he's so hard to beat. Obviously, we saw him in his last fight go up against Frankie Edgar, a guy who obviously we know has got very good boxing himself, very good with the range. Also throws in that very, very big threat of the takedown, and he handedly beat Frankie Edgar. He was comfortable throughout the fight. He didn't really look like he got out of second or third gear in that fight. He does so well at keeping smaller fighters, which there are a lot of smaller fighters in that featherweight division than him. He's so good at keeping them at the end of his jab or his 1-2. He's got fantastic takedown defense. Like I said, multiple times Frankie Edgar went for that single leg and Holloway shrugged it off with no problem at all. And for me, this is going to be, again, another fantastic fight where it's going to be two guys who want to push the other guy back with their with the dictation of pace and range, and which will result in them both just meeting in the middle and trading. And we've seen both these guys have got no issue doing that. We saw Volkanovski was happy to stand there and trade against Chad Mendes. We've seen time and time again that Max Holloway is happy to stand there and trade with anyone, whether it be featherweights or whether he's going up against Dustin Poirier, the Dustin Poiriers of the world, who obviously he lost to in the fight before Frankie Edgar. But you've got to think that Poirier had a much bigger size advantage in that fight. I mean, Poirier has talked multiple times about possibly moving up to welterweight. Obviously, Max Holloway was coming up from featherweight, going up to lightweight. And Holloway could take the hardest of punches from Poirier, who's putting guys away fight after fight recently. So for me, I've got no issues whatsoever that Max Holloway has got the durability to see out this fight. Do I think Volkanovski will be able to take Max Holloway down and keep him down for a significant amount of time in this fight? No, I don't. I think Max Holloway will be able to defend the takedowns. We've seen him defend against guys before. As I mentioned, Frankie Edgar, Brian Ortega as well. Ortega isn't a massive wrestler. He's more of a jiu-jitsu guy. We do know that he will... we do know that he does occasionally like to throw in a takedown. I think he did land a couple of takedowns on Holloway in their fight, but he gets back to his feet so quickly. Then when you go back through his the career of Max Holloway, Ricardo Lamas, he's a very strong wrestler. Charles Oliveira, again, he's a guy who likes to get the fight to the ground no matter what. I don't see Volkanovski being able to take Max Holloway down and being able to keep him down for significant periods of time. So then it really just ends up being a striking battle. Who do I think the better striker out of Max Holloway and Volkanovski is? I think it's Max Blessed Holloway. I think he's a fantastic striker. Like I say, he does the fundamentals so well. His 1-2s are fantastic. He's got a great left hook as well. I think obviously being the taller guy, he will be able to dictate the range better than Volkanovski will. I think he'll be able to keep Volkanovski on the end of his punches. And if it comes down to a straight tear-up where the two of them just want to stand in the middle and trade, I'm more than happy to put my money on Max Holloway in that situation as well. He doesn't back down from anyone. Like I say, he's got an iron chin. He's so hard to put away. As we've seen, hasn't been put away since 2012. That Dustin Poirier lost back then. Yeah, so for me, I just can't see a route to victory for Volkanovski in this fight. Maybe I don't even think a big right, one of those big straight right hands will do it, because Holloway took everything that Dustin Poirier had to throw him, and I think Poirier hits a lot harder than Volkanovski does. So for me, I think Max Holloway is going to remain the champion. It's going to be still. I think again Volkanovski is durable himself. I think he'll be able to see out the 5 rounds. I think this is going to be another fight that goes to the judges' scorecards. But I think Max best Holloway is going to take it. I'm going with Max Holloway to retain his belt and win this fight.
Yeah, man, it's a great fight, and I also agree. I do think it sees the judges' scorecards as well. Now, I mean, from Holloway's point of view, take away the Dustin Poirier fight earlier on this year, that was up a weight division against a really great fighter, but predominantly is a featherweight fighter, isn't he? So he's on a 14 fight win streak if you take away that Dustin Poirier fight, which is crazy. But what's crazier is Alexander Volkanovski is on a 17 fight win streak. Like, it's such a great fight, and I'm so happy that Volkanovski is getting a well-deserved title shot here. Now, the other crazy thing is yes, Max Holloway is 5 inches taller than Volkanovski, but it's actually Volkanovski that holds the reach advantage. He's got a 2-inch reach advantage over Holloway, which is crazy to even think about. But is that really going to play a part in regards to the reach versus the height? I'm not too sure. Now, with Holloway, we've seen time and time again, you know what you're going to get from the guy. He even likes playing games in the cage. He's got phenomenal technique when it comes to his striking, crisp jabs, 1-2s. He really peppers away, a bit like what I said with Colby, except there's plenty more technique behind what Max Holloway throws. But he really just peppers away at his opponents and really messes the face up. And it's weird because, again, like I mentioned in that last breakdown, he almost has that style where the more he hits his opponent, even though he's not doing significant damage in regards to power, it just tends to hit the gas tank of his opponents. They just seem to get tired of being punched in the face, which, to be fair, I think if someone was landing 100 punches on my face, I think I'd get quite tired of that as well, But in regards to Volkanovski, and this is key for this fight, Max Holloway has never fought a fighter with the pace and pressure of Alexander Volkanovski. I genuinely think Volkanovski is a real special talent. I don't think he's absolutely exceptional in any specific area, but he reminds me a lot of Leon Edwards in regards to the fact that he's just so good everywhere. He doesn't shine in one specific area. He's just so good everywhere. And the bottom line is, again, just like Leon Edwards, he's a winner. He just knows how to win fights. And I know that's a bit of a cliche, but he just, no matter what happens in the cage, he can adjust, he can adapt, and he just knows how to get the job done. And you almost have that confidence in him when he's in the cage and he's going to work. That Chad Mendes is a really good example, because he had to adapt a lot in that fight. And a lot of people, including myself, were predicted Chad Mendes to win that fight and was obviously wrong. But he had to work, but at the same time he had to make in-cage adjustments, and it just blended perfectly. And that's what I really like about Volkanovski. Now, in the Dustin Poirier and Max Holloway fight earlier on this year, you saw glimpses of how Max Holloway reacts to somebody who, even though Volkanovski's small, he's still physically imposing, and you saw glimpses of how Holloway deals with those fighters that are physically imposing, that will be constantly coming forward, that won't be tired by getting hit, that won't be pushed on the back foot when there's volume landed on him. Volkanovski will keep coming forward, and I almost feel that's that's a blueprint to beat Max Holloway. The type of fighter, I believe the only type of fighter that will beat Max Holloway is somebody that has that forward pace and pressure that's just relentless and won't stop with it, and also won't get knocked out very easily either. And Volkanovski fits that description for me, and I actually think we've got an upset on the horizon here with this fight, because I genuinely feel that this is Volkanovski's time, and I don't like picking against someone like Max Holloway because he is a special talent in his own right. But yes, I can see his path to victory. Would it shock me if he just peppered away at Volkanovski for 5 rounds and took a decision? No, it wouldn't, because we've seen it time and time again. But like I say, he's facing somebody different in there, somebody that's a lot smaller. It's going to be a lot more awkward to land those punches. Volkanovski isn't static. He doesn't move backwards in straight lines. He's going to be hitting angles. He's going to be just hard to deal with inside the cage. And I honestly just feel that Volkanovski's got a very, very good chance of winning this fight. Like I say, in regards to the wrestling, I don't believe Volkanovski's going to have too much success with that. Again, he may score a takedown or two over the 25 minutes should it go there. But like you said, John, I do agree with you. If he takes Holloway down, Volkanovski's never shown this sort of level against fighters that are anywhere close to the level of Holloway, that he can keep opponents down and he can work on top and pin them. And Holloway just ain't going to allow that anyway. He's got good takedown defense on the other side, so it's going to be difficult for Volkanovski to take him down. And if he does, I think Holloway will get back up. I don't think it's going to weigh too much in the judges' eyes. So I actually don't think Volkanovski should come into this fight thinking, I'm going to score a couple of takedowns, because even though he hasn't got a bad cardio, it's not great for your cardio shooting takedowns and constantly having to dump your opponent to the mat. So I don't think that should be in that game plan. But like I say, just landing shots, getting into the pocket, pushing Holloway back. This is all stuff that Volkanovski can do, and it's all stuff that looks good in the judges' eyes. So, would I be surprised if Holloway won this fight? No, I wouldn't. But this is our first fight disagreement on the night, John. I'm going for Alexander Volkanovski. I think he wins the featherweight championship, and I think he gets it done by decision. And in the next fight on the Newsome MMA main card, another title fight. This time, we've got Amanda Nunes versus Germaine de Randamie. Amanda Nunes sitting at minus 280 with the comeback on de Randamie at plus 240. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is another really interesting fight, another rematch that's going down. Obviously, these two ladies fought previously back in 2013, in which Amanda Nunes won that fight in the first round quite comfortably, got the fight to the mat and was landing the ground and pound. I think Germaine de Randamie would probably still argue to this day that she was defending herself and the fight was stopped a little prematurely. But if you go back and look at that, there's probably no qualms in the decision. But both these fighters have come on a long way since that original fight back in 2013. I mean, quite rightly so. Amanda Nunes has been talked about as the female GOAT, the greatest of all time. She's beaten some fantastic opponents. When you just look at who she's beaten, it's pretty much a who's who. Valentina Shevchenko, Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey, Shevchenko again, Cyborg, Holly Holm. I mean, there's just so many good fighters, and Germaine de Randamie as well. Obviously in their original fights. I mean, there's so many good fighters that she's beaten, and quite rightly so. She's been discussed as a GOAT, and she's just phenomenally strong in the bantamweight division. She just possesses such power in those hands. We saw that against we've seen it multiple times. I mean, she just beats her opponents up. Ronda Rousey fight, she just absolutely pummeled her into oblivion. Raquel Pennington was a 5-round war where she busted up her face and then finished her late on in the 5th round. She's got that durability. Cyborg was a brawl in which she caught Cyborg over and over again. She wasn't afraid to get hit. Holly Holm was technically beautiful and landed that lovely head kick and follow-up strikes. I mean, Amanda Nunes has got it all. She's strong on the ground. She's got good jiu-jitsu. She's good when it comes into the clinch, and her striking is absolutely sensational. And she really is a killer in this division. But she's going up against a fighter in Germaine de Randamie, who I think people are possibly not giving de Randamie the respect that she deserves. I mean, she's an elite level kickboxer. She's got a fantastic kickboxing career prior to this. I think she fought 46 times, won 46 times, with 30 knockouts, I believe. She's transitioned to MMA well. Obviously, she took a few losses earlier on in her career, lost her opening fight on the regional scene, lost to Julia Budd back in Strikeforce in 2011, and obviously that Amanda Nunes defeat that we talked about. But she's undefeated since 2013. Yes, she's only fought 5 times since then, but she's gone up against some very dangerous opponents herself: Holly Holm, Raquel Pennington, Aspen Ladd, who a lot of people were talking about Aspen Ladd being the next big thing. Obviously, we saw her compete this last weekend in DC, get back in the win column, but de Randamie just showed that superb striking again, and finished that after 16 seconds of the first round with a strong right hand. And I think people don't give de Randamie the respect she deserves because they have what I think unwarranted dislike of her because of that Holly Holm fight. Yes, she landed a couple of strikes after the bell. That fight in UFC 208, the main event, wasn't particularly entertaining. I unfortunately had the displeasure of being there live for that, and it wasn't a great fight. She did land some shots off the bell, but I think she's kind of, people since then haven't really warmed to her. And if you watched I can't think of the name off the top of my head now. It might be Inside the Octagon for this week with Dan Hardy. She did an interview, and she's a really nice lady. I mean, she's had a fantastic career up to this point, and like I said, I think people write her off just because of the fact that they possibly don't like her as on a personal level rather than her skills, because undeniably she's one of the best strikers in female mixed martial arts, and for me, I think she may have the slight technical edge over Amanda Nunes in the striking. And Nunes, I think, has the power. I think Nunes is more of a brawler. She's got that big, heavy right hand, that overhand right, the big right hook that Germaine de Randamie will have to look out for. But de Randamie is more of a counter striker. She likes to throw strikes down the pipe. She's very, very technical in the clinch. She's got huge knees. We saw that against Anna Elmos back in 2016 in Rotterdam. She's got lovely elbows as well. Her weakness always used to be on the ground, obviously coming from a kickboxing background. She even said in that Inside the Octagon interview with Dan Hardy, she said that she didn't really pay attention to the ground game. She wasn't interested in it. She liked to strike. She likes to stand and fire strikes and exchange fists with people, and she didn't really have that interest in the ground game when she first came over to mixed martial arts. But now she said that she absolutely loves it. She said that she's kind of obsessed with jiu-jitsu. She's obsessed with the ground game. She's always showing her coaches new techniques that she's picked up. She said that she spends most of her day watching techniques on YouTube. So if she can keep this fight standing and keep it off the ground, I mean, for me, this is going to be a really, really, really close fight, and unfortunately for us UK folk who have got hopes of getting to bed at a reasonable time, I'm going to disappoint you, because I actually think this is going to be another fight that goes to the judges' scorecards. I think that de Randamie is tough. She's very hard to put away. Obviously, I know Nunes put her away before with the ground and pound, but I think this is a very different Germaine de Randamie. If she ensures that she doesn't get caught up in a brawl, she remains technical, she keeps circling away from that power right hand of Nunes, I think this has the potential to go the distance, and I honestly think now this has the potential for an upset. I'm a big fan of Germaine de Randamie, and if you watch her fight, she, like I say, she's so technical in her striking. She might not have that power that Nunes does, but she's hard to put away herself, and she's very technical, and she can win fights with that technical style. Now, does she beat Amanda Nunes? I don't know, because Nunes has got so many ways in which she can win this fight. She's so powerful. She's in hands, feet, elbows, knees, and she does have finishing power. Whereas I don't think Germaine de Randamie does have that finishing power. She does have finishing power, as we saw in the lad fight, but not quite that same level of finishing power that Amanda Nunes does. But I think that Germaine de Randamie will fight a very clever fight here. I think she'll be very cautious early on. I think that she'll, like I say, try and avoid that right hand, especially of Nunes. She'll avoid trying to get involved in a brawl. One thing I don't think she will mind at all is Amanda Nunes coming crashing forward. We saw in Nunes' last fight against Holloway. That happened several times when Nunes threw that massive right hand. Holloway avoided it, but obviously with the momentum of you throwing that punch, and the two fighters came together and kind of got into a clinch position. A couple of times Nunes went for the trip takedown, and Holm was aware of that, and she kind of didn't really want to get involved in the clinch in any way, shape or form. But I don't think Germaine de Randamie will mind getting in that clinch. She likes being in that clinch. She likes those knees. She likes landing those heavy elbows, and I don't think she'll mind that at all. And I think that's a position where she could possibly flourish in this fight as well. If she kind of just hangs around on the outside, waits for Nunes to throw something, and overcommit, get in that clinch and try and work away try and grind. And we've seen her do it before, grind up against the fence in the clinch, utilise those knees over and over again, do enough just to stop the referee from intervening. And I think this is going to be a really, really close fight. And I'm going to be controversial here, and I think I'm going to be in a huge minority, but I'm actually picking Germaine de Randamie to win this fight. I really do think that she's got the technical striking to cause Amanda Nunes almost the most problems that she's come up against especially in her recent career, when we've kind of really seen this unstoppable Amanda Nunes that we've seen so often. And I think that de Randamie can pick her apart from the outside. I think if she does fight clever, Nunes has put so many people away recently, she may get frustrated. She may then start to come crashing forward, which then will just play into de Randamie's hands. Like I said, the key to it though is de Randamie remaining technical, not getting involved in a brawl. If it ends up getting involved in a brawl and a firefight and they're standing and trading, I do think Amanda Nunes is going to land heavy shots and could possibly put Germaine de Randamie away. But if she fights sensibly, if she counter fights well, uses her range, uses those straight shots, avoids the big right hands, utilises the clinch to good effect when Nunes comes crashing forward, I really think she may be able to steal a very close decision in this fight. And I'm going to put my neck on the line, and I'm going to pick Germaine de Randamie to win this fight via decision.
Man, you do that time and time again. You think you're going to pick one way and then you end up picking the other way. It's funny.
I like to keep people guessing.
But man, I think this fight is absolutely fascinating. And, the first thing I want to talk about is just make no mistake about it. This fight, both fighters are not the same fighters they were when they last met. It was over 6 years ago. I think de Randamie had 6 pro fights before that in mixed martial arts. So, neither woman is the same fighter that they were back then, and they're both much better. Hence why they're fighting for a UFC championship. And the second thing that I'll mention is, for me, the betting line is way too wide on this. Like, I get it. I get that Amanda Nunes is, I was going to say that hype fighter, but she's not hype. She's proved that she's a beast. For me, the best pound for pound women's fighter of all time. What she's done in the UFC and the way she's gone about her work is just phenomenal. But Germaine de Randamie, I'm telling you, is no slouch. She's a woman that's spent a lifetime in Muay Thai at as far as we know, high levels. So, and you can see that, she went out there against Aspen Ladd and put her away in 16 seconds. That's crazy. Like, Aspen Ladd is a good fighter, and a fighter that has looked good in the majority of her fights that she's had. Yes, she's still young, she's still developing, but Aspen Ladd is a fighter that's going to be difficult for anybody. And Germaine de Randamie went out there and finished her so quickly. And I get it. I get Amanda Nunes is a great fighter. Technically on the feet, she's been improving. She's added kicks to her game. She's got power. She's aggressive. Cyborg hits her clean numerous times, so she's durable. Her ground game's phenomenal. She's got good submissions, good grappling. She's got strikes from the ground as well. I totally get the Amanda Nunes side, but I genuinely think she is matched here on the feet. I don't know another way. I don't know another way to put it. Like I say, yes, she's good on the feet, but so is Randamie. Like you mentioned, John, she's a good counter striker, but she can come forward as well. And when she does come forward, it's powerful low kicks. It's shot straight down the middle, powerful strikes, and we've not really seen, apart from glimpses in that Cyborg fight, we've not really seen Amanda Nunes cracked hard for long periods in this fight, and I think that's what we're going to see in this fight. So for me, the line is way, way too wide. It's quite simple for me in this fight. I think that if the fight stays on the feet, I think it's going to be relatively close, and I think Randamie has got a very good chance of winning this fight if it hits the scorecards, which I do think it will. But if Amanda Nunes can get Randamie to the mat, I think she mops the floor with it. I really do. I think that's where the biggest gap in skill and experience is in this fight, and it's on the mat. Even if Amanda Nunes ends up on bottom somehow, she can throw submissions up, she can use them to reverse, to sweep, that sort of thing. So I genuinely think if Nunes can get this fight on the mat in any way, I think she's going to mop the floor with Randamie. But then the problem with that is Germaine Randamie has got some of the best takedown defense that I've seen in the clinch, with a back against the cage. Her balance is good, her base is wide, she gets the underhooks in really well. Yes, she's been taken down before, but listen, she's a developing fighter. Remember, she came from Muay Thai. This sort learning wrestling defense and jiu-jitsu defense, all this sort of stuff, as a fighter that's spent the majority of their life in a striking discipline. You've got to respect that stuff takes time and development. And I genuinely think where a BJJ defense hasn't developed too much, I do think a takedown defense, a wrestling defense, has developed quite a lot. She's just a tough woman to take down. And is Amanda Nunes that type of fighter that will shoot in on a double and lift her up and slam her to the mat? No, she's not. Can she get a trip? It's possible, but then when Randamie's base is wide, it's then hard to really get in on one, wrap your leg around one of your opponent's legs that's wide and then forcing them down to the mat, especially when they're a big female as well and they're strong in the clinch. And then the other side to this is if Amanda Nunes is playing in the clinch that much, that's where Randamie's dangerous. She's a Muay Thai specialist, knees, elbows, like she's vicious in the clinch. So I honestly just think I really think this fight is a lot closer than the line suggests, and a lot closer than some people are making this fight out to be. If Nunes goes in there and starches her early like she's done with a previous few opponents, I'll take my hat off to her. Respect for credit where it's due and respect for that. But I just don't think it's going to go down like that. I think it's going to be a tough scrap. I think it's going to go the distance. I think both women are going to have the moments. I actually think Amanda Nunes is going to start off really strong in this fight. I think she's going to start landing on Randamie. Remember, Nunes has got a history of tiring in fights where she's pumping out a lot of volume and her work rate's high. So I know we haven't seen that in her last few fights. Even when she went to the decision against Shevchenko, she still looked okay. The second time, that is. So maybe that's been fixed. We don't know, but I'm just saying that there has been a history of that. But I do see Amanda Nunes starting off strong in this fight. I do think her output is going to be a little better. Her movement's going to be a little better. Her speed's going to be a little bit quicker. But I honestly think that sort of come halfway through the second or third round, I do feel that Randamie is going to start having moments, and I think Randamie will be the one that finishes stronger. I think it's going to be a close decision. I really do. With that said, though, I just feel that Amanda Nunes' start in this fight is going to be greater than the finish of this fight for Randamie. So for that reason, I do lean Amanda Nunes, but she has to be careful the longer this fight goes, because I think Randamie is going to be dangerous at the latter stages of this fight, especially if Nunes is putting in an aggressive output with a high work rate early on in the fight. So I'm going to take Amanda Nunes to win this fight, and I'm going to take her to win via decision. And in the next fight on the Newsome MMA main card, this is the first fight out of the two that was chosen by the public on Twitter. So we've got Marlon Moraes versus Jose Aldo at 135 pounds at bantamweight. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this again, this is a fight that intrigues me, but it's a fight that I really don't want to see, to be honest. I mean, Aldo's a legend of the sport. He's a legend of mixed martial arts. Like I say, he was on a bit of a mini comeback after the 2 Max Holloway losses when he defeated Stevens and Moicano before that Volkanovski loss. But I don't think going down to bantamweight is going to do him any favours here. I'm pretty sure that anyone who's listening to this will have seen the pictures of Aldo recently on social media, and he doesn't look good at all. I mean, in my opinion, he looks very drawn out. I don't think the cut down to 135 is going to do him any favours. I know he spoke about previously how he struggled to get down to 145, and there's a lot of talk as well about him moving up to lightweight many times in his career, and I just don't think a move down to 135 is the thing that's going to help him out in the long term. I don't really see. He's 33 years old now. I don't really see how it's going to massively benefit him. I mean, when you look at those pictures that came out, if you look at the body composition in comparison to a guy like Henry Cejudo, who obviously went up from flyweight to bantamweight, Cejudo just looks so much more natural at 135. He looks the fitter, healthier man than Aldo does, and yeah, it's I can't really say that I'm overly anticipating Jose Aldo at 135, having seen those pictures, but it's still a very interesting fight because pictures can be deceiving. I mean, he says that he's feeling great. He says that he's in fantastic condition. Obviously, that could be putting up a smokescreen. You never know, but it's going to be an interesting fight either way, going up against Marlon Moraes, a guy who just fought for the title against Henry Cejudo. He started off really, really well in that fight. He landed those really quick leg kicks over and over again. He was causing Henry Cejudo real trouble with those. Cejudo didn't really have an answer, but then towards the end of the second round, he started landing some heavy shots. Something that Marlon Moraes really struggled with in that fight was that tie clinch. And that's something that I'm sure Aldo would have picked up upon. Cejudo over and over again was getting in that clinch position towards the end of the second round and throughout the third round, and landing those heavy knees to the body and to the head. And Moraes didn't really look like he had an answer for those attacks. And that's something they will definitely have to have worked on going into this fight. We know that Aldo's a very dangerous striker, no matter where he is, whether he's just straight up boxing, kickboxing, or whether it gets into a clinch position. And that really was the beginning of the end for Moraes. And he kind of just ran out of gas and really faded in the third round, and Cejudo put him away. And we know that Aldo's got a history of fading, more so in the 5-round title fights. I think 3 rounds suits him a lot better. We saw, I think, just that mentality shift in 3 rounds as well in the Stevens and Moicano fights. I think when he was fighting 5 rounds against tough guys, I think especially as Max Holloway fights where Holloway put on a real pace, I think in the back of his mind he knew that I've kind of got to keep a little bit in reserve because I do fade in 5-round fights, so I can't really utilise my full striking arsenal or throw the kind of output that I want to, because I need to save something in reserve for the 4th and 5th round if it gets there. 3-round fights against Stevens and Moicano, he doesn't have to think about that because he's got the gas tank to last 3 rounds. Well, he certainly did at featherweight. Obviously, we don't know what his gas tank's going to be like cutting down to bantamweight, but he had the gas tank to do it for 3 rounds. So that means he could kind of just throw what he wanted. He could just be natural in their striking and not have to really overthink doing too much, and that resulted in back-to-back finishes. Obviously, that massive body shot against Stevens in the late in the first round, and then the follow-up strikes, and then that big punch on Moicano in the second round, and follow-up strikes, and that'll be something that he'll have to think about going down to 135. Will he have to keep a little bit in reserve in case it goes to a 3rd round because of that extra cut, or will he be able to just naturally fight his natural fight and play out his natural striking game plan. But having seen that last fight against Volkanovski, where he was quite tentative, he was getting beaten to the punch, he was getting beaten to the kick, as we mentioned in the Volkanovski breakdown. Volkanovski was landing leg kicks, especially that inside low kick. He was dictating the pace, he was dictating the range. It worries me that he's dropping down to 135 against guys who are going to be quicker than him naturally. I think the smaller guys, obviously, if you're already at 135, you've been at 135 for a long time, I think naturally your speed will be there a little bit more. Aldo's got a lot of miles on the clock as well, which obviously add up. He's pretty durable, Aldo. Obviously, we saw him put away against Max Holloway twice, and obviously we saw what McGregor did to him in 13 seconds. But those two guys are different animals. I mean, just those one punch shots. He obviously, the McGregor fight aside, he's taken heavy shots from a lot of fighters over his career. Chad Mendes, Korean Zombie, Chad Mendes on a couple of occasions. Obviously had those big fights with Uriah Faber as well. And he's not that kind of guy who will get put away with one big punch. But again, I'm talking about at 145. So whether the cut has any effect on that, we'll yet to see. But for me, I think Marlon Moraes is going to. I think he's going to win this fight. I think he's going to have that edge in speed. I think he's going to just look more natural at this weight class. I think that Aldo's going to struggle with the speed of Moraes. I think that Moraes is going to land those shots, those leg kicks that we've seen, that we saw in the Cejudo fight, that we've seen in the previous fights as well against Sun Tzu, and then he has the potential to mix it with the those low kicks, set up the high kicks, which you saw with Jimmy Rivera. And I just think Aldo's going to have real trouble with the speed advantage that Moraes has. The fact that in the Volkanovski fight he was getting beaten to the punch over and over again, he was getting beaten to the kick over and over again. He's now fighting smaller, quicker guys, and I can't see the fact that he's dropping down and cutting even more weight and cutting out size. I don't think that is going to help him in any way, shape or form going into this fight. And given the images that we saw right there, I do worry about the chin as well. I do think if Moraes can land multiple shots over the course of 3 rounds, we saw in the Holloway fights, it's the constant strikes landing over and over that tend to put him away and tend to cause him more trouble. And for me, I think Marlon Moraes is actually going to put Jose Aldo away. I think he's going to put him away late in the second round as we get to that halfway point in the fight. If he's landed some shots, if he's pressing and not allowing Aldo to dictate the pace, I think that just the repetition of strikes over and over again, he's going to catch up with Aldo, and I think that one heavy shot from Marlon Moraes will lead to the flurry that sees the fight stopped. And I hope this is the first and the last time we see Aldo at bantamweight, because I don't think it's the right decision in his career at this stage. And yeah, my decision is Marlon Moraes to win this fight via knockout in round 2.
Yeah, I think that pretty much all the shine from this fight, and I actually think a lot of the shine from the entire UFC 245 card is going to be surrounding this fight, because like you've already mentioned, Jose Aldo he's cutting down to 135 pound. He was never a small featherweight, or shall we say he never had an easy cut to 145 at featherweight. So moving down to 135 at this stage in his career, it's absolute madness in my eyes. And those pictures that you're talking about, that I'm sure everybody's seen, if you haven't, just Google it, Jose Aldo 135 pounds on Google or Twitter, something will come up. Those pictures look absolutely horrific. Like I can't really explain in more words than that, like how bad that he looks. And the other report that's coming from those pictures is that Aldo's actually at 152 pounds in those pictures. Now, I don't know how true that is. I don't know if that's a typo. It's supposed to be 142, because, he's never seemed to look that bad at 145 pounds. But if that's true, and he's at 152 pounds in that picture, and he has another 17 pounds to cut, that's ridiculous. Like, it's unbelievable. I'm going to put this out there as well. I said the same thing when Luis Pena dropped down a weight class to fight Steven Peterson. And I said the same thing there, that I just don't see where else that weight cut's going to come from. And just before I talk about what I'm about to say, just one thing to mention is I'm a couple of minutes into the breakdown of this fight, and guess what? I'm still talking about the weight cut. I just feel that the shine of this fight is just going to be solely on that. But the point that I was trying to say is I think Aldo's going to miss weight. I just do not see him hitting 136 pounds for this fight. I don't think he's going to make the weight. I think Moraes is going to have a nice 20 or 30% bonus added to his paycheck. And I think it's going to be a horrific cut, and I think it's going to play a huge part in the fight as well. Like you said, John, you've made some good points. Aldo, although he did seem to be a little off in that Volkanovski fight, I must admit, I did cash Volkanovski as an underdog, which I was obviously happy about. But Volkanovski was just beating him to everything. The punch, the kicks, his speed, his movement, pace, all that sort of thing was just too much for Aldo. And like you said, he's dropping down in weight against natural bantamweights who have been making this weight and fighting at this weight for a long time, and against the best competition and performing well. I know he lost to Moraes lost to Henry Cejudo in his last fight. There's no shame in that, in my opinion. I think Cejudo is on a completely different level to anybody at bantamweight and flyweight as well. But Aldo's going to be fighting naturally quicker fighters and fighters that can last that duration of 15 minutes and keep up that same work rate, that same volume and pace and pressure and all those sort of things. And I just feel that it's just a crazy decision for Aldo to do this. He didn't want 5-round fights at featherweight after the Max Holloway fight. He said in the Jeremy Stephens fight, he made it quite clear that he didn't want 5 rounds. Begs the question why he's specifically saying he doesn't want 5-round fights. Is it because his cardio isn't what it used to be and he can't go those 5 rounds? But then now he's dropping down to 135, and I know he's not doing 5 rounds, but if I'm right in what I'm saying, and his cardio was a huge concern for him to not do 5 rounds at 145 pounds, then coming down to 135 which makes no sense whatsoever. I think the weight cut is going to seriously affect his durability. I don't think he's going to be as hydrated as he needs to be. I don't need to explain the science behind this and how it works. I'm sure everybody listening knows exactly how it works. So, I'm not going to teach you to suck eggs, but I just think his durability is going to be shot in this fight. And I don't think it's going to be a case of the first hard punch that lands on his chin is going to knock him out. But I feel that if Moraes lands, 2 or 3 shots, a combination maybe that lands, or he just hits him hard a couple of times, I just don't see his chin holding up with this brutal weight cut. I think in regards to volume, Aldo can have volume in this fight. He's got to put something on Moraes. But if he's working hard and really putting it on him, and he's got a high output, then is he gonna seriously fade halfway through round 2 or in round 3? It's definitely possible. That I can't stress enough how brutal this cut is and how much it's going to play a part in this fight. If this fight was at 145 pound and Moraes had moved up, it'd be a completely different breakdown. But the fact is it's not, and Moraes is an exceptionally good fighter at 135 pound. In the UFC he's only lost against Henry Cejudo, who I've just said is on a completely different level in my opinion, and his other loss was a split decision against Rafael Assunção, a fight where I bet Moraes and lost, and I feel a little bit hard done by. I don't hate the decision too much. I more hated the singular 30-27 scorecard to Assunção, which was unreal, but again that's a different story. So the point I'm trying to say is fighters like John Dodson, Aljamain Sterling, Jimmy Rivera rematched Assunção and finished him in the first round. He's fought the best of the best, and he's great everywhere. He's fast, he's got power, he's got an insane switch kick which he knocked out Jimmy Rivera with. He tried landing it on Sterling, but Sterling ducked down and the knee hit him before the foot, knocked Sterling out. So his weapons that he uses are just really good. I just think he's a solid fighter. He's almost a fighter that I think people, and rightly so, were saying he was a mini Aldo when he first came into the UFC with how he fights. Nice low kicks, good power in his hands, durable, push forward, calm under pressure, that sort of thing. And I feel that from a skill perspective, the fight is relatively close. But in this fight, in 2019, I just trust Moraes to land more volume. I just trust him to be the one pushing forward more often than not. I trust his cardio more. I definitely trust his durability more. And I agree with you, John. I think he's going to knock Aldo out. I really, really don't see Moraes not landing multiple hard punches on Aldo's jaw over 15 minutes, and I just don't think Aldo will be able to take that sort of shot with the cut that he's having. So I think Aldo's going to miss weight, but I still think it's going to be a brutal cut. I'm going to take Marlon Moraes to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. And in the final fight on the Newsome MMA main card, the second fight of the public's choice on the Twitter poll, we've got a crazy one, man. We've got Geoff Neal versus Mike Perry. Geoff Neal sitting at a massive 245 favourite with the comeback on Mike Perry at plus 205. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm going to keep this this relatively short and sweet. This is going to be a really fun fight. This is going to be whenever Mike Perry's fighting, you know that it's going to be pretty wild. You know that there's going to be brawling involved. You know it's going to be aggressive. It's going to be violent. And going up against a guy like Geoff Neal, he's got a willing counterpart, I believe, in that crazy kind of fight. I mean, he's not called Hands of Steel for nothing. We've seen what he can do to people. Nico Price in the last fight, he finished it in the second round. Frank Camacho, he put him away with a massive head kick after beating him up for 2 rounds. Camacho is a really tough guy to put away as well. And then he's got wins on Dana White's Contender Series against Chase Walden, and obviously that rear naked choke against Brian Camozzi in his UFC debut back in February last year. Now, Mike Perry, as I just said, he's not the most technical guy in the world by any stretch of the imagination. He's an out-and-out brawler. This guy wants to go in there. He just wants to take your head off no matter who you are. You always have to be wary of his striking because he hits hard. But I don't think he's as much of a finisher as people originally possibly thought he was. Obviously, we know when he came into the UFC back in 2016 at UFC 202, he finished Hyun-Kyu Lim via strikes in the first round. Then obviously he had that war with Danny Roberts at UFC 204. He was actually losing that fight before he finished it with 20 seconds left. Then he finished Jake Ellenberg with a massive elbow. Ellenberg at that point was on his decline, and then Alex Reyes he landed the big knee in the first round to get the win. But then he's got the last few fights he's fought, obviously since then, when he's fought against tougher opposition, Ponzinibbio, Max Griffin, Donald Cerrone and Vicente Luque, they've kind of had his number. His wins as well against Paul Felder. Felder obviously broke his arm in that fight, and he still managed to see out a decision, albeit Paul Felder lost that split decision. Then Alex Oliveira in the fight before the Vicente Luque fight, and for me, I don't think Mike Perry has got the power to put away Geoff Neal in this fight. I think Geoff Neal's a lot more of a technical striker. I don't think Geoff Neal will be, although he'll be willing to engage in the striking, I don't think he'll be silly. I don't think he'll be stupid about it and just kind of stand right in front of Mike Perry and allow him to get his shots off and allow him to land the heavy bombs. I also worry about Mike Perry coming to fight so recently after the Luque loss. I mean, his nose took a hammering in that fight. This is quite a quick turnaround given the damage that he took in that fight. Obviously, Mike Perry's never going to say no to a fight ever in his life. We already know that. He'll probably, if he fights this Saturday, he'll probably be willing to take another fight on the Sunday now, Mike Perry. But yeah, that also worries me. And Geoff Neal's so quick. I think he's going to have such a speed advantage over Mike Perry. He's got such speed in his hands, such quickness. His footwork's great. He's got great 1-2s down the pipe. And then, as we've seen on a couple of occasions, he's got that really good high kick that can put people away. I just think for me, in this fight, Geoff Neal is going to be the far more technical striker of the two. He's going to be the far crisper, the far quicker with the strikes. I think Mike Perry's going to go in there and he's going to want to engage in a brawl. He's going to want to throw hands. He gets a bit wild with his hooks and those looping shots. But I think if Geoff Neal sticks to the game plan, which will be hit a move, he'll be hit those 1-2s down the pipe, move, get off the centre line, avoid those big shots, avoid the big hooks, and then just keep rinse and repeating that. And I think Geoff Neal is going to have success throughout this fight, especially with that speed advantage. Mike Perry is really hard to put away, especially with strikes. I don't think he's ever been finished via strikes in his career. I know obviously he lost to Cerrone via armbar. I don't see Geoff Neal, although he has put really tough guys like Frank Camacho away. I don't think Geoff Neal is going to finish Mike Perry in this fight. I think he is going to go the distance, but I do think Geoff Neal wins, and I do think he wins a fairly comfortable decision as well with his with the far more technical striking of his. So I'm going with Geoff Neal to win this fight, and I think he wins via decision.
Yeah, this fight's crazy, man. I'm really looking forward to it. It could potentially be one of those people's fight of the nights. But like Mike Perry, how can you not love Mike Perry? He's crazy inside the cage. He'll always come to bring it. Throws hard punches, good knockout power. Never been knocked out himself as well, which is it's pretty crazy to think, when with the style that he's got. But the dude's just durable, as shown in the Vicente Luque fight, where his nose was completely and utterly destroyed, and yet he was still taking shots to it. He was still taking shots to the face. And Luque's no pillow fist fight, He's that dude's got a serious power behind his punches. You can ask multiple fighters about that, but yeah, it's hard not to love Mike Perry. And then Geoff Neal, on the other hand, is a fighter that I like a lot. I see real potential in this guy. I have done for quite a while now. And his striking technique is just so good. It's so crisp. His jab, his 1-2s, everything is... There's no wasted strikes with him. Everything is... thrown for a purpose to land on his opponent. They're not always thrown with full intent like what you get with Mike Perry. They are very sharp strikes, and then when the time comes to land powerful strikes, then he'll throw down, he'll land. He's got brutal kicks as well. You can ask Frank Camacho about that. That was an insane head kick. The dude has just got such a good MMA game, even down to his wrestling. His wrestling, he hasn't shown too much of it, but you can see that it's there from the moments that we have seen. He's just all round. He's just a very solid fighter. But the one thing that does worry me a little bit with Geoff Neal in this fight is Niko Price. He was able to draw him into that brawl, make it Price's fight, and Price ultimately, no pun intended, paid the price. But the fact that he allowed himself to get into that brawl where that's not really his game, that's his opponent's game, and he sort of accepted that, is a little bit worrying, because Mike Perry could be looking at that fight and thinking, okay, well, Niko Price managed to get him to fight that way. Maybe if I come out aggressive and get in his face and wing bombs, I can get him to fight that way in this fight. That gives Perry a really good chance of winning this fight. I actually think, for as much as I like Geoff Neal, that this line is also extremely wide. I think it could be a lot closer than what the bookies are making it out to be. So it's tough. It's not an easy fight to call, because it all depends ultimately on what Geoff Neal does inside the cage and whether he gets himself into that brawl again. The other thing you've got to consider is, Mike Perry's losses in the UFC, Vicente Luque, Donald Cerrone. I'll give him a pass on Max Griffin. He just didn't look like himself in the cage. And I know it's very easy to say, oh, we'll give him a pass here. But listen, these are professional sportsmen and women, Just like in football or any other sport, athletes have an off night, an off day, off form. Some people have bad form over 2 or 3 games, fights, matches, whatever sport you're involved in. So it's the same for MMA. You can go out there and have a bad night. There's so many factors that can play into it as well. And the other loss, Santiago Ponzinibbio. So they're all really top guys that he's losing to. And do I put Geoff Neal in the top guy category? Yeah, I do. I genuinely think that he's a fighter with some very serious skills. I'm going to be predicting Geoff Neal to win this fight, and I wouldn't be doing that if I didn't think he was a top fighter. I just think it's going to be crazy, for maybe the first round, maybe 7.5 minutes. I think Neal will have his moments in those crazy first 5 to 7.5 minutes as well. I don't think it's all going to be one way with Mike Perry, but ultimately I agree with you. I see it hitting the scorecards. I think the longer the fight goes on, the less crazy it'll become, the more Geoff Neal will start to shine, and the more he'll start to take over. I think it's going to be one of those fights where sort of at the start of the fight, or at least the first half of the fight, you're going to be thinking, "Fuck, this is a close fight," but then the second half of the second round and then into the third round, I think we'll see Geoff Neal slowly pulling away. And it'll be one of those where it is the judges' scorecard and you think, do you know what, Geoff Neal's probably going to grab a 29-28. So I'm going to take Geoff Neal to win. I'm going to take him to win via decision. And with the Newsome MMA main card complete, we'll now quick fire off the remaining Newsome MMA prelims. And first up is Petr versus Urijah Faber. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is a really interesting fight between these two guys, and for me, there's only going to be one winner in this. I know we've seen Urijah Faber 2.0 in his last fight, Mr. Knockout, with that win over Ricky Simone, but for me, he's at 40 years of age. He's slowing down. I wouldn't have minded him staying in retirement. Petr for me is the better boxer. He's going to be able to keep the fight standing. I don't think Urijah Faber is going to be able to out-wrestle him and take him down. Petr cuts those brilliant angles. He's so quick with his strikes. I just think he's going to be able to comfortably outscore Urijah Faber in the striking department and get a comfortable 30-27 victory. So my winner is Petr via decision.
Yeah, Petr a beast. Like I agree with pretty much everything you've just said. You know, he's the far better boxer. He's quicker. He's got the harder punches. He's gonna be able to keep the fight on the feet if he needs to. If Urijah Faber does shoot in. The one thing I will say though, and I've heard a couple of people say this to me as well, and I tend to agree with it. And I thought it myself after the Ricky Simone and Rob Font fight last week. Urijah Faber. I said this at the time when he fought Ricky Simone, that he looked in very, very good shape for a 40-year-old man that's coming back from a few years out of the fight game, you know, as a retired fighter. And I know he's always in the gym and he's always working, but he looked exceptionally good for an old guy at 135 pounds. And he one-bombed Ricky Simone, whereas Rob Font landed some unbelievably powerful shots on Simone and couldn't put him away. So I'm not out here making assumptions, but I just feel that Urijah Faber is there's a little something about him in this resurgence in his MMA career. I don't think it's going to be enough to put Petr out, but man, just don't be surprised if we see another good performance from Urijah Faber. That's all I'm saying. But I can't pick him to win this fight. I am going to pick Petr to win. I just think he's far better everywhere. He's a beast. He's dangerous. I'm going to take Petr to win, and I actually think he's going to finish him late, so I'm going to take him to win via knockout as well. And in the next fight, we've got Ketlan Vieira returning after a long time out as well versus Irene Aldana. John, who have you got?
Yeah, we haven't seen Vieira for a while, and I'm looking forward to seeing her back in there, seeing what adjustments she's made since she fought Kat Zingano, which was all the way back in March of last year, nearly 18 months out now. Obviously undefeated at 10-0, and she's going up against a tough opponent in Irene Aldana. For me, though, I think that Vieira is going to win this fight. I do think at some point, despite the fact that Aldana has got such fantastic takedown defense, I do think at some point that Vieira is going to be able to get this fight to the mat. And when she gets the fight to the mat, she's very heavy on top. Aldana possibly edges the striking out of the two. She uses those long limbs really well. Now there's not much of a height difference, but she uses her reach really well. She uses those long legs as well. Yeah, as I mentioned, I think at some point Ketlan Vieira is going to be able to get this fight to the mat. I think she'll be able to do that for in 2 of the 3 rounds of this fight. I think it's going to go to a decision, but getting the fight to the mat and spending some top time there will rack up the points in the judges' scorecards and see Vieira get the decision victory. So I'm going with Ketlan Vieira to win this fight, and I think she wins via decision.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Ketlan Vieira, you know, undefeated 10-0. I've been high on her for quite a while. I think, again, like I've just said with Petr, you know, she's got improving, well, I didn't say Petr Yan's got improving striking. He's got great striking. But I think Ketlan Vieira's striking is good. It's still improving. She is more of a BJJ player, though. She's great on the ground, good submission. She's dominant in top control. But Irene Aldana's not that easy to take down. And I know Pennington did it, and ultimately, I think the fight was won by Pennington from that groundwork. But I like Vieira a lot as a fighter, and I am going to be picking her to win this fight, but I do have slight reservations. You know, she's been out over 18 months. That can play a factor. But also on the flip side, you know, she's quite young in her career. That time off, she could have been developing at rapid rates. So we could come in here and see a much better Ketlan Vieira. She could come out here and look like a minus 300 favourite. We don't know that. So I do have slight reservations on why she was out and what effect that has on her. Is there going to be some ring rust from her? But ultimately, I'm going to take her to win this fight. I just feel that on the feet is going to be quite close, but she always finds ways to get fights to the mat. And I think if she does get Aldana down, she gets her back settled and she starts working on top. I do think a top control is really dominant, and I think she can win the fight there. That's ultimately how I think the fight is going to be won and lost. I do think it hits the judges' scorecards. I think Aldana might be able to steer out the way of the submission attempts and just defend herself properly down there. I'm going to take Ketlan Vieira to win. I'm going to take her to win via decision. And in the next fight, we've got Ian Heinisch versus Omari Akhmedov. John, who have you got?
Yeah, obviously we see Ian Heinisch took his first loss in the UFC in his last fight against Derek Brunson. He was outstruck, and Brunson took him down on a few occasions. And in all of his UFC fights so far, the Cesar Ferreira and the Antonio Carlos Jr. fight, it's been a bit strange because his offensive wrestling's pretty good, but he always seems to be able to get taken down and spends a bit of time on the bottom. And he's one of those fighters where I think throughout his UFC career he'll win a few fights in a row, and then he'll come up against someone who is just that level above him. And Omari Akhmedov is a guy who is he's on a bit of a resurgence. He's won 4 fights in a row after those back-to-back losses. He seems to have sorted out those cardio issues and that output issue. I mean, he was just he was just really struggling with the fact that that he just didn't really have the gas tank to be able to go into the later rounds against guys and be competitive in those later rounds. And sorry, my bad. He won 4 of 5. He obviously had that draw with Marvin Vettori in between those 2 wins apiece. But he looked much better in his last 2 fights against Tim Bosch and Zach Cummins. He was able to take Cummins down. He's got a good takedowns. He's a strong wrestler. As I said before, Heinisch is a guy who you can take down, and I think this will play out similar to a lot of Heinisch's fights. He'll get taken down quite often. He'll get back up. He'll look quite decent striking, but I think Omari Akhmedov is going to get the victory in this fight. Again, this I feel like I'm saying this over and over again, but again, I think it's a fight that's going to go to a decision. Akhmedov does have that one-punch power, but I just don't think we're going to see it land. We haven't seen it for a while. I mean, all of his recent victories have come via decision, and I think this one's going to be exactly the same. I think Akhmedov takes Heinisch down on a few occasions throughout the 3 rounds and takes a decision victory.
Yeah, I'm the opposite way on this one. I see this a little bit differently. So, you know, I appreciate that Akhmedov's looked really good in his last 2 fights against Tim Bosch and Zach Cummins, but I don't think Zach Cummins really offers a lot in regards to volume, output, and pace and pressure. And in regards to Tim Bosch, the dude was borderline on retirement before then. So, you know, coming in against Tim Bosch, again, who's not a fighter that's going to put a really fast pace type of fight on his opponent. I feel that both of those fights were really good for Akhmedov to look good in, and that's exactly what happened. And you know, Akhmedov, his volume was very low in those fights. It was almost like he was conscious about his gas tank after the Marvin Vettori fight, even though he moved up in weight for that fight. And he was able to just dictate the pace of the fight, which was key to winning both of those fights. I just don't think Ian Heinisch is going to let that happen. Ian Heinisch is a fighter that will always be moving forward, will always try and put a pace on you. I know he tired in his last fight against Brunson, which was out of character a little bit for him. I think he ended up saying afterwards that he was struggling with some sort of illness leading into fight week, and he felt that played a part. So I don't really put too much stock into him tiring in that fight. I do think he's going to outlast Akhmedov if it goes to 15 minutes, which I do think it will. And I don't think Akhmedov's going to get this type of fight where he's going to be able to dictate the pace of the fight and the range, which is key to him winning fights. He does have a good takedown shot. I'll give him that. Heinisch can be taken down. I appreciate that. But the one thing that I've always said again about Ian Heinisch, bear in mind, I think I've picked against him in every single one of his fights so far, is that he has very, very underrated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and he can stand back up. That showed against Shoeface as well. Shoeface is no joke when it comes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And Heinisch was able to, not nullify that, but he was able to make sure that didn't matter when it hit the judges' scorecards. I think this fight's going to be one of those fights where Akhmedov will score a couple of takedowns. He's not a real relentless wrestler like he used to be. I think he does have that cardio in the back of his mind, but I do think he's going to score a couple of takedowns. But I think when the fight ends up back on the feet, because I do think Heinisch can stand back up relatively quickly and relatively simply, I think when it's on the feet, Heinisch is going to do more damage. So if and when it hits the judges' scorecards, like I've already said, which I think it will, I think they're going to be looking at what do we score more? Do we score the couple of momentary takedowns with not much action on top from the aggressor, or do we score the volume and the damage caused by the striker? And I just think it's going to be the latter that scores on the judges in the judges' eyes. So I think Ian Heinisch is going to do more over the space of 15 minutes, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. And in the next fight, we've got Matt Brown versus Ben Saunders, a fight that I don't see really anybody talking about, which is crazy because this fight is going to be unbelievable for as long as it lasts. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is a really interesting fight between two guys. Obviously, two veterans of the sport. Matt Brown obviously retired after he defeated Diego Sanchez with that massive elbow from hell back in 2017. He gone on a 3-fight losing streak prior to that, went out on top, but he's decided to come back. And this is a good fight going up against Ben Saunders, who's another guy, 36 years old himself, who's at the tail end of his career. He's only won one of his last 6, which is against Jake Ellenberger, another man who's on his way out. When you look at who Ben Saunders has lost to, 5 of the 6 fights, Peter Sabata, Alan Joban, Sergio Moraes, Lyman Good, Takashi Sato. It's a tough one because when Matt Brown was losing towards the end of his career, he also lost 5 of 6 there against Donald Cerrone, Jake Ellenberger, Damian Maia, Johnny Hendricks and Robbie Lawler. All tough guys in their own right. I know obviously Jake Ellenberger's a mutual opponent for both of them, but Matt Brown fought Ellenberger in 2016 and Saunders fought him in 2018. There was a big difference between those two Jake Ellenbergers. For me, I think the immortal Matt Brown is going to win this fight on his return. I do think Saunders is really, really chinny now, and I do think that he's this could be his last fight. It's a tough one because he seems to fare quite well in fights early on. I mean, he's really dangerous in the clinch. He's got brilliant jiu-jitsu. He's got good knees. He's got good elbows, like I say, in that clinch. But he then always ends up getting caught and getting hurt, and his chin really has pretty much gone. And it'll be interesting to see what the timeout has done for Matt Brown. I mean, I know he lost to Donald Cerrone via strikes and then Jake Ellenberger via strikes in his last 2 losses before the Sanchez fight, but I didn't really think that. I remember when he was seen him fight, I didn't really think that his chin had particularly gone like massively, not to the point that I think Ben Saunders has now. So for that reason, I think Matt Brown is going to catch Ben Saunders with something in the second round. I think Saunders always tends to start pretty well, but I think Matt Brown catch him something in the second round, and that will lead to the finish. So I'm going with Matt Brown to win this fight by knockout in round 2.
Yeah, I mean, this is how fast this sport moves, man, because to think that Diego Sanchez fight was over 2 years ago is crazy. It seems like it was this year, but you're looking at this fight and it's with 2 veterans, and it's going to be a fun one for as long as it lasts. And what I mean by that is I just don't think it's going to hit the scorecards. Now, you look at Matt Brown, you look at where he's weak and where Ben Saunders can potentially target, and it's the body for me with Matt Brown. I do feel that he's weak to the body. And the ironic thing is, yes, Ben Saunders is has won 1 out of his last 6 fights, but that one that he won started with a knee to the body. So, ironically, that's where we're sitting at. But on the flip side, Ben Saunders is weak to anywhere in the face. You know, he's got to that point in his career where he's just not durable anymore. And, you know, he does do, like you've mentioned, John, he does do good work inside the clinch with knees and elbows. And he always comes to fight, and he never looks bad. He never looks terrible until he gets caught. And unfortunately, I don't see a scenario where in 15 minutes that Ben Saunders doesn't get punched or elbowed or kicked in the face very hard by Matt Brown, and ultimately that's where I'm sitting. I do think there's a window of opportunity if Saunders can tie up with Brown and start unloading some knees to the body, because like I say, I do believe Matt Brown is that's if you are picking weaknesses, that's where you would pick where Matt Brown's weakness is to that body. So I do believe there's a window for opportunity, but I think that window's quite small. I definitely sit on the side of Matt Brown being able to land something hard on the face of Ben Saunders before he's put away with any sort of body strike. So for that reason, I'm going to take Matt Brown to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. And in the next fight, we've got Chase Hooper versus Daniel Teymur. John, who have you got?
Yeah, Chase Hooper's a really interesting prospect. Only 20 years old. He's 8-0-1 at the moment in his professional career. Unbeaten throughout his amateur career as well. He's a tall, rangy guy. He's 6'1". He described his own style as awkward, and if you watch any clips of him, especially when the fight gets to the mat, he is awkward. And especially in that last fight against Luis Gomez, where he won by rear naked choke in the first round, Titan FC, he was all kinds of crazy scrambles, and he was constantly throwing up. He constantly throws up submissions off his back. He's got really long legs for the weight class, and he's constantly looking to use those to scramble, to sweep, or to take the fight to the to throw up the submission and look for a triangle or an armbar. Sorry. Going up against Teymur, I think Teymur will be the better striker. Obviously, Chase Hooper it will have a massive height advantage, reach advantage, when Teymur's only 5'5". Something Teymur does struggle with is when the fight hits the mat, and he's lost a couple of times by a rear naked choke. Chase Hooper looks like he's got a very good rear naked choke. I think if Hooper can get this fight to the mat at some point, I think he'll be able to have some success. I mean, I've watched a couple of his fights, and he does have a very good rear naked choke. I think he's won 3 or 4 of his fights via that technique. Daniel Teymur's lost a few fights via that technique. If the fight stays on standing, I think Teymur is the far more decorated striker, and I think he'll be able to damage Hooper, and I think he'll be able to have success. But I've just got a sneaky feeling in the back of my mind that the 20-year-old Hooper's going to get the fight to the mat at some point, be able to take the back of Teymur and get the choke, and I think this guy's going to be definite one to watch out for in the future. As I say, 20 years old, 8 victories under his belt already. So I'm going with Chase Hooper to win this fight, and I think he wins it via rear naked choke.
Yeah, it's a really interesting fight, and I'm going to keep this really short and simple as well, because I do think that this breakdown is very short and simple. Now, Chase Hooper's not lying when he said his style's quite awkward. You know, it definitely is. And on the other side, we've got Teymur, who, like you said, has struggled on the mat in the past. But he's, you know, again, like I mentioned with Randamie, he's got a lifetime of striking experience, just like his brother. The biggest problem for me, though, with Teymur is his cardio. You know, he goes all out normally in the first round, and then he just tires himself out come sort of the second minute into the second round. Now, like I say, I feel that this fight is quite simple, because Chase Hooper, you can tee off on this dude, and he will accept a beating. We saw that in his Contender Series fight, and I think that Teymur's going to start stronger in this fight. I think he's going to tee off on Hooper. I think the difference in the striking is going to be quite evident early on. I think just like a lot of other Teymur fights, he's going to put it all on his opponent. He's really going to let go of his strikes, and if he doesn't finish Hooper in that first round, Hooper will take over this fight once he's taken the hardest shots from Teymur, and also Teymur started tiring as well. So I think it's quite simple. I think Teymur's going to tee off on him early, and if he doesn't get him out there, I think he loses the fight. Personally, I don't think the fight ends in round 1. We've seen Hooper take a beating. We know he's durable. He doesn't look good, and he can get dropped, but as long as you come back and win that fight, that's all that matters, right, in regards to getting your hand raised. So I think Teymur's going to deliver it all to him in that first round. It's really going to look like Teymur's going to mop the floor with him. I think we hear that bell at the end of round 1. and I think Hooper takes over rounds 2 and potentially 3 if it goes there. But I agree, I think Hooper's going to get the fight to the mat at some point when Teymur's tired. I think he's going to choke him, so I've got Chase Hooper to win. I'm going to take him to win via submission. And in the next fight, another good fight, we've got Brandon Moreno versus Kai Kara France. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is another really fun fight between two dangerous flyweights, and I think for me the key to this fight is whether Brandon Moreno will be able to get the fight to the mat and spend some time there against Kai Kara France. Kai Kara France is a very decorated striker. He trains with some real dangerous guys. Obviously, Volkanovski is one of his training partners, as is Israel Adesanya as well over at City Kickboxing.
And Dan Hooker.
Dan Hooker, of course, as well, yeah. He's nicknamed Don't Blink for a reason, because for one of the lighter guys, he's got some real power in his hands. We saw that previously when he fought in the Ultimate Fighter house. I think Brandon Moreno, although he's good on his feet as well, I think his best path to victory will be able to spend some time on top and kind of nullify that the striking threat of Kai Kara France. But that's easier said than done. Kai Kara France has got decent takedown defence. He doesn't get taken down all too often. I think he was taken down once by Mark De La Rosa in his last fight, and for the vast majority he's able to keep it standing and beat him up on the feet. And I think that's how this fight is going to go as well. I think Kai Kara France is going to be able to land some strikes on Brandon Moreno. He's got good output. As I say, he's a very good striker. I think he'll be able to keep it striking for long enough to put a bit of a beating on Brandon Moreno on the feet. And Brandon Moreno is a tough guy, man. He's hard to put away, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, and so, I think he'll see out the 3 rounds. But I do think Kai Kara France is going to get the judge's decision.
Yeah, man, Brandon Moreno striking isn't all that bad, to be honest with you, considering that he is predominantly a grappler, and he's also a really good grappler as well. You know, that's his base. He's very tricky on the mat. His transitioning is really good, and he can always slide to the back. That's something that I really love about Brandon Moreno. No matter what sort of position he's in on the mat, whether it's against the cage, whether he's on bottom or whether he's on top in the centre of the cage, he's always got a way to slide round his opponent and get the back, and that's where he's extremely dangerous. The problem that he's got in front of him though with Kai Kara France is Kara France is very hard to take down, and when you do get him down, he normally does bounce straight back up. So I think what Brandon Moreno has to do in this fight, if he's going to have any success, is when he tries to take Kai Kara France down, which I believe he will, because I think the difference in striking is relatively large. So when he does take Kai Kara France down and they're in scrambles against the cage, I do think he's got to try and find that back, try and slide his way onto Kai Kara France's back and really settle on the mat and look for that rear naked choke. Even if he doesn't get the choke in the round, if he spends long periods on Kara France's back, I think he's got a good chance of winning those rounds that he does that in. But like I say, that's going to be easier said than done. If he can't do that to Kai Kara France, I think he's going to get lit up on the feet, because Kara France is predominantly a striker. He's a very good striker. He's crisp, he's sharp, he throws in volume, he has power as well. He's good at adjusting inside the cage also. So I just feel that if this fight is won and lost on the feet, which I think it is going to be unless Moreno can pull something off on the mat, I just see the difference in speed and accuracy being too big for Brandon Moreno to take a win here. And again, just like you, John, I've seen Brandon Moreno take some beatings, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt as well. The fact that he can stay in there, he is durable enough to hang in there for all 3 rounds. But like I say, unless he can really make those back takes work in this fight, it's going to be Kai Kara France that gets his arm raised. So I'm going to take Kai Kara France to win. I'm going to take him to win via decision. And in the next fight, we've got Jessica Ai versus Viviane Araujo. John, who have you got?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Jessica Ai comes back from obviously that loss in the fight to Valentina Shevchenko in the co-main event for the flyweight title. That brutal head kick that completely put her out cold. I mean, that was only back in June. Prior to that, she looks good at flyweight. This is the division for her, as we've said so many times before. Obviously, got those 3 victories against Kalindra Farrier, Jessica Rose Clark, and Kailin Chikagian. All her other losses in her career have come against a much bigger opponent, those bigger bantamweights, and against some really tough opponents as well. Betch Gahea, Sarah McMahon, Juliana Pena, Misha Tate, Alexis Davis. these are all females who have been at the top end of the division, and as a much smaller fighter, it's I think she wishes this flyweight division will have come along a lot sooner. But she's going up against a fighter in Araujo, who's I've been impressed with so far. I mean, obviously she beat Alexis Davis in her last fight back at UFC 240 in July. Prior to that, in a UFC debut against Talita Bernardo, she landed that massive overhand right early in the third round to put her opponent away. She has got power in those hands, but for me, I just think Jessica Rai, just that experience in this fight will be able to see her through to victory. I mean, she's seen pretty much everything that fighters can offer at this stage in their career. And Araujo's, she's not young either, the same age as these two ladies. They're both 33 years of age. Jessica has gone up against the much tougher opponents in her career. As I said, a lot of them have resulted in losses, but that's because she's been fighting them at the wrong weight class, really. Her fight prior to the Shevchenko fight was a good win over Kailin Chikagan, who's right up there now in title contention. And for me, I just think Jessica Rai's experience will see her through in this fight. I think it'll be a close fight. It'll be quite even on the feet. But I just think Jessica Rai is going to edge this fight and take a decision.
I'm going to go the opposite way here, but I will say that the line is way too wide in this fight. I think Araujo's sort of hitting around the minus 170 favourite mark, and I disagree with her being that big of a favourite, but I think it's going to be one of those fights where, as I mentioned earlier on in this podcast, where one fighter is going to start well and the other fighter is going to finish well. And I think Araujo comes out very, very fast. Her movement's really tricky. It's really on point. Her strikes are sharp. And, she's really tough to deal with in that first sort of 5 to 7.5 minutes. But that movement does slowly stop because, it's hitting a cardio quite heavily. The constant in and out, left to right movement, and just really being active on the feet and being on her toes. So I feel that when this fight starts, I think Araujo is going to look great. She's going to be putting it on Jessica Rai. But I think Jessica Rai, in a veteran experience, is going to notice when Araujo starts slowing down a little bit, and at that point she'll start taking over the fight and finish the fight stronger. But I just feel that Araujo can still have something in the third round should she need it, in regards to even if it's just a simple jab and just trying to make sure that she sees the fight out. But I think she definitely does more early on and wins potentially the first 2 rounds, and then comes back and finishes the third round stronger and potentially takes that round. I see it being a very close 29-28 decision, but I do think Viviane Araujo is going to get a hand raise. So I'm going to pick Viviane Araujo to win. I'm going to take it to win via decision. And in the final breakdown of the podcast, we've got Punahele Soriano versus Oscar Pereira. John, who have you got?
Yeah, Oscar Pereira really needs to get a win in this fight. I think he's fighting for his UFC contract. This will be his 3rd loss in a row if he's defeated here against Punahele Soriano. Obviously, we saw Soriano in the Contender Series pick up that decision victory over Jamie Pickett. He's got some good wins on his career as well. I mean, the guys he's been fighting on decent shows, LFA, Titan, and he's not been fighting against bums either. I mean, all the guys that he's fought have got a positive record outside of his pro MMA debut. And he can win the fight in a number of ways as well. I mean, he's got some early finishes in his career via strikes. He's got a good power, but again, he's dangerous when the fight gets to the mat. He's good especially when you give up your back. He's very quick to lock in that rear naked choke. We saw that in the Patty fight, and we also saw that in his MMA debut against John Farrell. Oscar Pereira, again, he's a guy who can finish fights. I know he's lost his last 2 fights against guys who'd be much better than him on the mat. I mean, and that was evident with the 2 submission defeats. But prior to that, I mean, he was finishing everyone that he came up against outside of his UFC debut against Jonathan Wilson. I mean, Tim Williams, he defeated in the first round via strikes. Jason Radcliffe, when you go back to Cage Warriors 85, he defeated in the first round after 30 seconds. Sergio Souza, he won in the first round after 30 seconds. I mean, this guy was putting people away for fun earlier on in his career, and for me, he needs to keep this fight standing for the to stand the best chance of winning. Because if he does go to the mat and Soriano can take his back, then I do worry. But if Petr can keep it standing, I reckon he'll fare well with his striking. I think it's going to be quite an even fight. It's going to be an interesting fight, and I do think it's going to be a close fight with between Petr and the newcomer. But I'm going with Petr to win this fight. I just think the fact that if he loses his fight, I think he knows that he's out of the UFC. Obviously, that's not a guarantee, but that's just how I see it. 3 losses in a row. And stylistically, from what I've seen, I mean, I haven't seen a great deal from Soriano, but stylistically, from what I've seen, this fight could stay standing, and that could work in Petr's favour. So for that reason, I'm going with Oscar Petr to win this fight, and I think he'll win a decision.
Yeah, I'm going with Petr as well. There's a few traits that I don't like about Soriano that I saw from tape, and one of them is the fact that he spams the same big right hands over and over again, and I just feel that those sort of traits that you really need to snap out of when you're coming into the big leagues in the UFC, because it just ain't gonna cut it now. That may have just been one of the traits that he's shown very briefly, and he's worked out of that and he's developed, because he is a fighter that is still developing. But for me, I like Oscar Petr in this fight. His striking's decent. It's definitely decent enough to hang. And if Soriano does start throwing or spamming the same sort of strikes, I just think it's going to be relatively simple for Petr to adjust to them and start to counter them and really make Soriano pay. And if Soriano tries to take him to the mat, because the dude is a wrestler as well, you know, Petr's no joke on the mat. He's a black belt in BJJ. He's competed in multiple ADCC tournaments. He's a good grappler, and I just feel that Soriano might just be out-trumped in all departments in this fight. I don't think it's going to be like a one-way fight or anything like you said, John. I do agree. I do think it's going to be a relatively close fight. I just give a slight edge to Petr no matter where this fight goes. So for that reason, I have to pick Petr to win. And then you're sort of thinking, well, how does he get the job done? You know, it's very rare that we see Petr go to the scorecards. I personally think he can hurt Soriano, and then it's up to him what he wants to do. If Soriano drops, then he can either jump on a submission or jump on strikes. I personally think at some point in this fight it's going to hit the mat. I do give the edge to Petr when it hits the mat, so I'm going to take him to win via submission. And that's it for this week's podcast, guys. So, John, before we hit the Newsome MMA mentions, what do you need to mention, man?
Yeah, just as always, just hit me up on Twitter at MMA and me. Always happy to talk fights and talk MMA with all of you out there. Really love getting all of your different opinions on the different subjects that we see in the MMA world day in, day out. So yeah, hit me up at MMA and me.
Now for the Newsome MMA mentions. First of all, I want to mention the Newsome MMA website. Don't forget to visit the outlet's website at newsomemma.co.uk, where you'll find the locally famous tape index feature, prediction videos, fighter interviews, and the content collaboration with Heavy Duty Fight Management too. You can even request colour commentary and media coverage from Newsome MMA as well. Next up is MMA Play 365, which I spoke about at the start of this podcast. MMA Play 365 is the perfect betting advice platform for any type of gambler, whether you're in this game for the long term or whether you just want some fun bets whilst watching the fights on the night. The goal is to make money, and that's exactly what we'll be doing for you. Follow MMA Play 365 over on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, or visit MMAplay365.com to subscribe today. The next mention is for Isagenix, who provide supplements, solutions and support to professional athletes, along with anybody who has an active lifestyle, whether that be practicing a sport or going to the gym. Be sure to check out the Amped Performance range of products, which are perfect for athletes in all sports to increase energy and performance for when it matters. Find out more at www.mmaplay365.com/Isagenix. And the final mention is for our sponsor of Newsome MMA, Golden Ticket Fight Promotions. Golden Ticket put on some fantastic MMA shows and are one of the biggest regional promotions in the Midlands over here in the UK. Their next event is GTFP 13, which goes down this weekend at the Golden Ticket Arena Starworks in Wolverhampton. Find out more information on the event by following their social channels on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And that's it from us, guys. Enjoy the fights on Saturday night. Have an amazing Christmas and New Year too. We'll see you again in 2020 for UFC 246.